This is the story of a petrochemical revolution, one that launched a century of partnership in Baton Rouge, a partnership based on satisfying ever-changing customer preferences, running safe and environmentally responsible operations, and hiring and retaining an exceptional team of people. These are among the guiding principles that changed Baton Rouge one generation at a time. It was about the turn of the century. Henry Ford sold roughly 8,000 of his new Model Ts in 1900.
The oil industry in the era right before the building of the Baton Rouge refinery was primarily producing kerosene for lighting. And when electricity came in, Edison's systems were proven to work in the big cities. They lost a giant market.
It's by those kerosene lights that Adolphus Stafford, one of 9 children, was born in Livingston Parish, Louisiana in 1909. To help feed his family after his father got sick, he took a job at a sawmill in Walker at age 9.
But Dad told me to give him a day's work for a day's pay. So if he didn't have to have you, he wouldn't hire you.
Stafford's work ethic would serve him well, as he too would later join the revolution, spending 20 years of his long life at the company that became ExxonMobil. As Edison's light snuffed out kerosene sales, Mr. Ford's new horseless carriage created demand for what was once considered a waste product, something called gasoline.
One of the things that happens, we find the big deposits of oil as at Spindletop, Louisiana, Texas, Oklahoma, just at a time where the nation is facing a choice. What kind of car are we going to have? We're going to have an internal combustion gasoline engine, we're going to have a steam engine, electric cars. All those were out on the table at the turn of the century. And the fact that we had so much oil really tilted the balance toward the automobile.
Louisiana was not yet a major oil-producing state. Baton Rouge offered navigational advantages and relatively higher ground closer to the oil fields in North Louisiana and Oklahoma. On September 21, 1901, Jennings, Louisiana, about 93 miles west of Baton Rouge, made history, bringing in the state's first oil well at 1,700 feet. The town later became known as the cradle of Louisiana oil. But on its own, crude oil isn't worth much. Scientists were convinced that you could rearrange the molecules and create a dazzling array of products that would improve the quality of life.
It's a democratization of the economy where you don't have to be rich to own things, and the petrochemical revolution is a big part of that.
By the summer of 1907, with the boll weevil devastating southern cotton crops, South Louisiana farmers were looking for other things to do with their land. On Tuesday, April 13, 1909, the headline on the Daily State Times broke the news: $5 million company to build $2 million plant in Baton Rouge. On that date, the state of Louisiana granted the original corporate charter, giving the Standard Oil Company of Louisiana the ability to operate. The name Standard chosen to signify high, uniform quality. Standard Oil of Louisiana was a wholly owned subsidiary of the Standard Oil Company of New Jersey. The company had big plans for this 216 acres along the Mississippi River, for which the company paid the then respectable sum of $48,000, about $225 an acre. Baton Rouge in those days, a town of about 15,000 people, was about to become one of the nation's new petrochemical boom towns.
We could not have achieved what we've achieved here, the growth that we've achieved over the past 100 years, growing from a 2,000 barrel a day refinery to a 500,000 barrel a day refinery and a world-scale chemical plant, without the support of the Baton Rouge government, local government, state government, and the community.
On July 4th, 1909, the New York Times reported that demand for all types of autos was rapidly increasing, and that production in 1910 would likely double to 200,000 units. In Baton Rouge, mules and men plowed the earth, and cotton gradually gave way to a complex cooker of hydrocarbons, the likes of which the world had never seen. During construction, the entire LSU football team is said to have worked as boilermakers to increase their physical strength. Permanent employment was projected to be between 5 and 750 employees, the first of tens of thousands who would pass through these gates over 100 years, from world-renowned scientists to school teachers.
The morning that I did take the entrance exam for ExxonMobil, I went in with the attitude, this is something I can tell my students about.
A graduate of Estruma High, Patrice Augustine thought she wanted to teach math.
So now I'm actually able to volunteer. There's a volunteer program that ExxonMobil have where for every 20 hours you volunteer, they give the school $500. So I actually participate in that now. So I actually work in the classrooms with my child. I can do it with my primary student, but my middle school students like, Mom, do not come to my classroom.
And it's part of everyone's life around the Baton Rouge community. It's been very good. You know, it's supported our community, it's supported our families.
ExxonMobil, as a company and as employees individually, have contributed a lot to just supporting the community.
Then, as now, the corporate citizenship extends to area classrooms. Baton Rouge newspapers followed Standard Oil's new project with vigor. In 1910, a pipeline stretched from Oklahoma to the new Standard Oil refinery in Baton Rouge. 2 years later, in 1912, Louisiana's first oil well in Jennings produced roughly 250 barrels of crude a day. And it's a good thing because all the while demand for petroleum products grew rapidly. Henry Ford's Model T, that mechanical marvel which sold about 8,000 units in 1900, sold 1.5 million units by 1913 and ran on gasoline straight from the stills. This 1917 photo shows the rapid construction required during World War I, as crude runs at the Baton Rouge refinery more than tripled those of just 5 years earlier. By 1918, the plant's crude run increased to a then astonishing 43,800 barrels a day. This shows Boiler House number 1 and number 15 battery being built. In the distance is the compound building. Advertisements like this one on January 6, 1920, in the State Times 4 p.m. edition, became common. This one touts a new subdivision called Suburban Acres on Brookstown Drive, halfway between Plank and Greenwell Springs Roads, just 3.5 miles from the Standard Oil refinery in Baton Rouge. Another advertisement of the day, this one on January 19, 1920, announced the opening of Rosalie Park. By 1923, the area encompassed by the plant had more than tripled. As the number of employees rose, mobile units fed the appetites of workers. The Doherty Land Company advertised a $25 cash prize for a letter not to exceed 100 words on why I should live in Standard Heights, another one of the new residential developments springing up in the shadow of the new refinery. The company soon began marketing its products from Baton Rouge to the world under the names Stanicola and Standard. In 1926, the steamer Sprague, known by many as Big Mama, arrived in Baton Rouge with 19 steel barges in tow, to the amazement of local citizens. In 1927, a 22-inch pipeline to Baton Rouge supplied what was then low-cost natural gas to the furnaces of the Standard Oil refinery. Roughly 30 salt domes throughout Louisiana provided a natural storage space for precious crude oil, a number that would swell to 85 salt domes just 4 years later. About that same time, Standard located a new process development laboratory in Baton Rouge, one that would eventually have profound impact on the Allied war effort in World War II. With each passing year, the capabilities at the Baton Rouge refinery grew with new discoveries and innovations.
Many of the best practices that have been deployed around the world originated here in Baton Rouge.
By 1929, crude production in the Jennings field swelled to almost 700 barrels a day. The U.S. Army Air Corps adopted 87 octane as the standard for fighting-grade gasoline in 1930. About the same time, Standard Oil of New Jersey made small quantities of iso-octane for laboratory use right here in Baton Rouge. This 100-octane material was used to compare fuels in test engines all over the world. It would later prove to be a key element in the Allied war effort. Tests for the United States Air Force confirmed that planes using 100-octane fuel flew faster, higher, and longer. In 1935, the Air Corps ordered 1 million gallons.
That's the way things work. You pull together, you help each other, you got a common goal. You see a problem, fix it. Step up.
In September of that same year, the first tank car of this new super fuel rolled out of the Baton Rouge refinery, and eventually, aviators like Major James F. Collins would return to Baton Rouge in recognition of the billionth gallon of 100-octane fuel from Esso Baton Rouge, the second plant in the world to achieve that milestone. This 1931 photo looking northwest shows 4 imposing crude oil distillation units. As the nation's appetite for refined petroleum products grew, crude runs topped 90,000 barrels a day at Baton Rouge. The Thirsty refinery added several new pipe stills, gas absorption plants, 1,000-pound cracking units, and employees brought their families to the very first refinery picnic. It's now an annual event. During the local complex's pre-World War II era, few motor vehicles traveled within the plant. Supplies moved by mule teams, and employees rode bicycles to get around. The Baton Rouge partnership grew deeper by the day.
The partnership with the local government, the partnership with the state government, the partnership with our contractors and the community has allowed us both to grow together.
A centerpiece of corporate citizenship was then and remains today education.
I try to let them know that this is not about making a grade. It's about making it in life.
Then, as now, countless employees devote thousands of hours each year volunteering in Baton Rouge area nonprofits and schools.
But I think all of those kinds of things give us a sense of accomplishment, of not just going to the job and coming home and getting a paycheck, but making us feel better about the city we live in and the kinds of things we're able to do for that city.
In the early 1940s, if you wanted a cup of coffee in a cat cracker control room, you got it from a device that looked like this. From its birth in 1909 until 1940, the Baton Rouge site produced fuel products, but no chemicals. That changed in 1940.
The Baton Rouge complex gives birth to what becomes Exxon Chemical, along with similar developments in Baton, but I think the Baton Rouge refinery is probably at the forefront of that.
The Chemical Products Division began as part of the refinery. Then, the opening shots of World War II. Baton Rouge native David C. Tiger Durr was on the Pacific Front.
I spent about 2.5, 3 years out in them islands, working with MacArthur and Bull Halsey, the Dutch East Indies, New Guinea, and the Philippines.
Durr watched Esso tankers refuel his landing craft in the Pacific, never dreaming he would later work for the company. With the Japanese cutting off rubber exports to the U.S., Esso installed butyl plants to produce a new substance, butyl rubber, developed in laboratories right here in Baton Rouge. The war required industry to develop a whole new business, and fast. By 1941, production of isopropyl alcohol was underway in Baton Rouge, used for everything from first aid to perfume. Demand grew, and today, the Baton Rouge Chemical Plant is the largest isopropyl alcohol manufacturing operation in the world. On May 25, 1942, the first fluid catalytic cracking unit in the world started operation right here in Baton Rouge. Fortune magazine called it the most revolutionary chemical engineering achievement of the last 50 years. Today, cat crackers produce almost half the world's gasoline. That same year, 1942, Plantation Pipeline Company opened its Baton Rouge headquarters. An underground web of hydrocarbons would form a key element of Louisiana's economic spine. The war fueled even more demand for premium petroleum products, so workers constructed new docks to handle large tankers, and soon the crude run rose to 137,000 barrels a day. Employees accustomed to a 40-hour work week increased their schedule to 48 hours a week to aid in the war effort. In 1944, Standard Oil of Louisiana merged into Standard Oil of New Jersey, an operating arm of the Standard Oil Company. In 1945, Interstate Oil Pipeline Company completed a pipeline from Natchez, Mississippi to Baton Rouge. As World War II ended, Tiger Durr came home. He took a job building houses in Baton Rouge.
And years ago, these people used to walk down 3rd Street with their little aluminum hat on, and that was a very prestigious sign, you know, and everybody used to do it now.
Other industrial neighbors moved nearby, and on August 29, 1946, the Baton Rouge refinery processed its billionth barrel of oil. In 1948, signs of changing times as Standard Oil of New Jersey changed its name to Esso Standard Oil Company of New Jersey. In October of that same year, the Esso Louisiana, the newest twin steel-hulled diesel-powered towboat, left Baton Rouge carrying about 4 million gallons of refinery products upriver. Now known as the Katie Hooper, the towboat is a restaurant located in the Hidden Cove Marina in Seneca, Illinois. Back in Baton Rouge at about the time Fats Domino dominated the radio airwaves, light ends recovery units, benzene, and the fluid coking process became hits at the Baton Rouge refinery. In July of 1950, Esso's main office building and the main cafeteria were completed. By now, Adolphus Stafford, that 9-year-old who went to work in a Livingston Parish sawmill, well, he was an adult working among the pipe fitters on Esso's main office building.
Well, if they're going to work for somebody, I don't think they could beat Exxon.
Designed and built by the John W. Harris Associates of New York City, the new office building was described by the company publication of the day, the Stanicolan, as, quote, the realization of a long-cherished dream. Companies have known for a very long time that good safety is good business. In the 1950s, Esso celebrated employees who joined what was known as the Wise Owl Club, people who avoided serious injury while wearing protective gear. Slowly, new, lighter, and more comfortable materials changed personal protective equipment, making PPE much more comfortable.
You will not find a company that is more interested in safety, impact to the community, the environment, and doing it in an ethical fashion. As you well know, ethics are way up on our list. Some of the shenanigans you hear about in the press, they're not tolerated here. There's a zero tolerance for that. And it's pretty impressive. I'm proud to be working for them.
By 1951, the Baton Rouge construction market slowed, and that brought Tiger Durr to the next step of his life.
Lucky enough, I just happened to have built a house for a man that was a big wheel down the lube and wax department at that time. And he said, come out here and try to get a job, which I did, and I was hired.
With nearly 58 years of service, David C. Tiger Durr would eventually become the longest-serving ExxonMobil employee in the world. All the while, the chemicals business grew and grew.
A lot of times, people associate the oil industry with just gasoline and other fuel products. They don't really think about some of the other things in terms of petroleum derivatives that impact almost every aspect of our lives.
R.W. Peterson writes in his book, Giants on the River, that in 1951, the Esso refinery determined it could recover its hydrogen sulfide and convert it to sulfur. Together with Consolidated Chemical, known today as Rhodia, Esso built a small process unit for the task not far from the refinery's south gate. After establishing an all-time safety record in 1954 and hiring one of the largest training classes in history, Esso's power former and its ethylene purification units became reality. In 1957, W.R. Grace began its high-density polyethylene operations in North Baton Rouge, an operation which later became Paxon and then the Baton Rouge Polyolefins plant of today, known as BRPO. By 1959, crude runs at the refinery topped 355,000 barrels, astonishing for that time. That same year, Esso Standard Oil Company merged into Humble Oil and Refining Company. Gradually, a complex that began by making 3 products grew to manufacture hundreds, and equipment used in process units became increasingly sophisticated and high-tech.
We're always asking ourselves, okay, what can we do even better?
What was once a place to boil oil grew into a place to rearrange molecules to their highest value, answering the market's call by chopping up and putting molecules back together to suit demand.
Next thing you know, you've got one of the fastest growing cities in the country with 2 great 4-year institutions, 2 powerhouse football teams. So we take a lot of pride in it.
In 1966, the chemical plant became Esso Chemical. Chemicals are an essential part of our natural environment. And in 1968, Exxon Plastics became reality in North Baton Rouge. Throughout Louisiana, oil production in the early 1970s leveled off at 1.6 million barrels a day, or about 7% of the nation's total at that time of 11.3 million barrels a day. But the American appetite for fuel continued to rise. In 1972, Standard Oil Company of New Jersey became Exxon Corporation, and Humble Oil became Exxon Company USA. Oil imports grew from 1/3 of U.S. consumption in 1973 to roughly 60% of U.S. consumption today. As oil imports almost doubled from 1969 to 1973, Louisiana Governor Edwin Edwards promoted the idea of the Louisiana Offshore Oil Platform. And in 1972, the Louisiana legislature created LOOP, a floating single-point mooring system tied to a pipeline big enough to drive a small car through it. Today, ships unload 100,000 barrels of crude in an hour. Now, almost 15% of U.S. crude passes through LOOP. Economies all over the world run on oil, and fossil fuels will continue to provide roughly 80% of the world's energy through 2030. There's no doubt that communities near petrochemical plants benefit from their jobs, products, and corporate citizenship. At ExxonMobil Baton Rouge, that corporate citizenship ranges from classroom volunteerism to rescue missions during hurricanes.
They're either in the attic or second floor or on a roof, and a little spark of hope, that, hey, we're getting out of here. The human spirit, it's an amazing thing.
That spirit was clearly evident during Hurricanes Gustav and Katrina, with 11 ExxonMobil employees in 6 boats plucking at least 1,200 people to safety over 36 hours.
And I was really impressed with the human spirit, the way people did step up.
It's an experience which etched permanent memories on the team's collective mind. ExxonMobil's primary role and most important benefit to society is to safely provide reliable and affordable energy supplies to people around the world. Doing this well is essential to improving standards of living, and we are committed to doing so in a financially, environmentally, and socially responsible manner. At ExxonMobil, we know our businesses have a direct impact on many lives. The oil and gas we produce and the technologies we've developed make it possible for millions of people around the world to light and heat their homes, fuel their vehicles, and power their businesses. Energy helps economies grow and is essential to modern society. It is in that spirit, a century after their start, that ExxonMobil's Baton Rouge facilities help fuel the world and produce chemical and plastics products which improve our safety, health, and well-being. Celebrating a century of partnership, I'm George Pietrogallo. Thank you for watching.